Welcome to the How Humans Work podcast. I am your host, Jeff Z, Jeffrey Salaji. So glad to have you here. Season 1 is afoot, and we are kicking it off by exploring not just human nature, but particularly the facet of fathers and fathering, the impact and the influence they have on the lives of my guests. Hold tight, stay tuned, and listen in because we are about to journey into a series of conversations. It is incredible. Let's get into it. Let's get started. Here we go. I'm excited to continue this adventure with Amir Ebrahimi. Welcome, Amir. Thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it is a show.
Yeah.
So, where to start? As I reviewed a little bit and looked on LinkedIn and Twitter to kind of fill out a little bit more of your professional life, a few things stood out to me. One was, and I know about this from our conversations we've had when we're together, is your passion for stretching your mind, your passion for challenging your mind as a software engineer, I think a computer scientist maybe as well, if that's the right terminology.
Yeah.
Okay, great. As a computer scientist and a software engineer who is really interested in machine learning, deep learning, quantum computing. Tell me about that part of your world and why that means so much to you.
I like how you start off with a simple question. Well, I mean, because I'm venturing in that space. I'm exploring that space too, trying, as we all try to find meaning with our own lives, or at least with me trying to find meaning in my own life. I get to understand more about myself through the work, the work that I choose, the path that I'm taking. So I'm kind of buying myself some time by explaining this. I'm trying to feel into that. One way I could go at this is with the idea of how technology and humanity, if I wanted to just bifurcate it along those lines, like technology and humanity have this relationship. And whether we're looking at like modern technology of the computer, that's one thing, but we could roll back much further, in history. But I'm not going to because I'm not an expert in that area. But I'm just drawing the attention that, throughout time, we've had this relationship with technology. I think it's very much in our face as individuals nowadays with the phones we carry, the laptops, like our TVs are smarter now. I mean, their TVs are pretty much have their own operating system. You boot your TV up now. It's not just a simple device. So there's this relationship of technology, and I love being in technology, but I'm not swallowed by it. I'm not like pro-technology. I'm not anti-technology. So I'm kind of setting that up because I love programming and computer science and the idea of computation in general, because there's some like built-in feature of our universe that computation can exist. And I think that's what fascinates me with programming.
What is the quantum side you're attracted to? How's that different than normal or standard computing?
Well, I just saw a talk recently by an IBM fellow. His name's Charlie Bennett.
Okay.
He's an amazing person, and he framed things differently. At some point, we'll probably talk about this. Quantum computers are right now seen as something that speeds up, that you could speed up computations. For layman purposes, like a quantum computer is faster than a normal computer. But Charlie Bennett, in this recent talk, he talks about how it's really our classical computers that are limited instead of a quantum computer being a speed up. Mm-hmm. Because as best we understand it right now, the nature of the universe is quantum. Like quantum mechanics is the way we explain the physics of things at a minute scale and also at an astronomical scale when we talk about black holes and things like that. So really, we have removed the quantum effects that cause problems with our classical computers. he reframed it as our classical computers are actually running slower because we were unable to embrace the quantum.
So let me just sit with that for a minute, because what I think I hear you saying is flipping around is that quantum computing actually is closer to reality and the nature of the universe. And so right now, our current versions of computing are simulations or delayed or echoes of the actual way in which reality works.
You got it.
Okay. That's fascinating. So yeah. I kind of get a glimpse as you say that and explain that, why this world suddenly becomes so interesting. I'm definitely clearly interested in life sciences and the health sciences and human sciences and human nature. That's why I'm doing a podcast on how humans work. I know that part of your human nature is this deep kind of almost Jedi-like adventure towards how high performance of a cognitive system can I have? How strongly can I relate with the best thinkers, the most cutting edge science in the computer sciences? And it's one of the things I admire about you. And it's one of the things I'm like, okay, Amir is a super interesting guy to me. And I would love to have this conversation. And I don't really want to get lost in the computing world. I'm interested in you, but I'm interested in getting a taste of it on two levels. One, why does that arouse your life force? Why does it pull you into this adventure? What spoke to you? And you started to hint at it, but I'm going to give you another chance to give me another layer of it.
Well, I mean, it's hard not to go spiritual with this. I'm going to use the term source. So whether that's the universe or Mother Earth or, God or, whatever maybe is bigger and beyond us all, there's some part of this journey for me that feels like coming home, like connecting back to source. It's not even about where I'm going to get. It's not about needing to complete anything. And what's neat is there's like an individual level of this search, or not search, like trying to gain the knowledge that I need in order to move this field along that's new. And then that's also happening at a collective level, because the field itself is so nascent that, people are at the fringes, these really bright minds at the fringes, they don't also know where this is going. And to me, that kind of is spiritual in a way, in that, like, I can connect with that. I mean, that not knowing is somehow tied to how we are as humans. We search for meaning with our lives. So it's just this neat expression of that, I think.
Yeah, I hear the way it brings you closer to the mystery, and at one level, but then closer to a sense of belonging or remembering. The second part I wanted to check in with you about is really, before we get into the father stuff, is really because you're at this meeting place of technology and humanity, as you put it, or machine learning, deep learning, AI, and human capacities. That interface is a really interesting juncture. And if I understand it right, you're somewhere in that story of exploring that juncture. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're part of that movement that's working that particular edge. What's your sense of that edge, of that relationship between humanity and technology, and where you say, at one level you said you don't know where we're going, but it is going somewhere where we've never been before. What's your thoughts on that, if you have any?
There's certainly an acceleration happening with machine learning, in that technology in the past 10 years. So machine learning has actually been around since the 1950s. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago when our technology made it to such a point that we could do these deep networks now that kind of mirror the brain. These machine learning models are allowing us to do deeper work than any one of our own brains almost could essentially do. And so looking at large data sets, I guess what I'll say is I see a convergence happening where machine learning it's now like interesting physicists and other, like outside of the technology area, being able to have audio transcribed correctly, or to, detect cats on the internet. I mean, that's a joke, but it's also kind of true because we have so many photos of cats on the internet that we've somehow, in a way, we're telling AI that this is an important thing to keep track of. I guess what I'm saying is it kind of sat in the technology realm for a bit, but it's now moving beyond that into the life sciences, into the, industrial processes, because there are certain types of problems that are just difficult to compute. Let's take COVID, for example. Simulating molecular interactions are just something that's beyond even our biggest supercomputers. So machine learning is kind of a heuristical way to break that down and compute something that would, not exactly, but give you a rough answer at these very difficult problems.
I mean, what I think I hear you saying, Amir, is that it's almost like quantum and machine learning allow us to think in ways bigger than a single human mind can conceive.
Yes.
It's almost like you can't, of course, mimic the whole of the universe, but we can get closer to what the universe understands in terms of data and relative information than a single human mind, or even maybe human history as a whole can think. Like if you think of all the thoughts we've had through the course of human history that have led to where we can do what we can do today technologically, it's like it's getting closer to that than the normal limitations. Am I on to what you're driving at?
Yeah, I think you're extrapolating a bit, and I would just say everything you're saying is in line with what seems to be happening. So it is becoming bigger than any one of our minds could ever do alone. And the mind is also brilliant. We can easily recognize things that are hard for computers to do. But that's where maybe there's this interesting relationship between, humans and AI, or the AI that, the machine learning that we have.
So I want to turn the corner here a little bit. Talk about a little bit more about your sense of you in the world. How are you known in the world, and how do you come to know the world at this point in your life?
Well, I can't actually say how I'm known in the world because I haven't had a good sense of self through most of life. Occasionally I have moments where I'm foolish in a way, and that, the way I think about myself is not actually how I'm perceived. So I'm just I'll leave that part as I just don't actually know.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah, sure.
When you say you haven't had a good sense of self, does that mean like your image system of what you imagine's happening and how you're perceived and how you see yourself? Like it's hard to be accurate with that?
Well, I'm tying some of this back to early childhood, where the story I tell myself is that because I didn't get a lot of feedback during those formative years, it really left me kind of not knowing, not having that great sense of self even at a young age. I mean, obviously I do have some idea of how I'm perceived, but then I'll be caught off guard. I'll have these moments where I'm like, wait, maybe the way I'm thinking about this is not at all like how other people experience me.
That sounds a little disorienting.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of it too, I think I've kind of let go of that need a little bit. I mean, if I can give one little story, like,
absolutely, jump in.
There was this time period where I was still wanting to be cool in some way, like, among friends. And I think I had this idea that I was cool, but then I'd have these experiences where I'd realize, wait, no, I'm not cool. Like I'm perceiving that person, and that was I don't know, that was kind of important for a while. But now I'm kind of at a point where I don't actually care. like if I'm like kind of awkward or geeky or I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I know other people that I would have that judgment about, and I'm okay if that's also how others perceive me.
Yeah. There's a kind of maturity and resiliency in that. I love the way you're being honest about it, though, and the need I can recognize, and I can start getting into my own relative stories to what you're sharing. But I want to go back just a tad to this question of, okay, so you're not sure how you're known in the world. How do you come to know the world aside from science? And I gather the computer science is a bit of a spiritual quest for you. Mm-hmm. But where do you find your connection?
I'll answer your question, but I'm going to start off with I think part of why I like science so much. There's a standard that just exists that is what it is. So if you want to be in the field of science, it isn't really based on people. I mean, maybe getting into certain schools or, there's a personal aspect to it, but the field itself is just the field. There's just what you need to know to be effective. And I love that there's no judgment in that. It just is. So coming back to your question, I don't know. I find it difficult to be in the world. I find connection in like-minded. I find connection in people who have integrity. I'm an introvert, so I'm frequently experiencing the world through my own thoughts. And I don't feel like I'm answering your question quite right, but
not a lot of expectations or pressure for this to go or be anything than it is. I trust you. I like you. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're talking. I just want to keep welcoming you to lean in.
Thank you.
Into whatever you're feeling or whatever the response is. Because, the show really is about our deeper human nature, our deep human nature, about how we work and what's going on and what moves us and what we understand and what we don't understand. One of the things that's interesting for me about your story, Amir, is you grew up in Alabama, right?
Yep.
And your father's Persian?
Yep.
And your mother is Haitian?
Yeah, Haitian.
And also, is your father's an immigrant? Or was he born here?
No, he's an immigrant.
Yeah. So I would love to kind of start talking about your dad and that early part of your life and what that world of Alabama was like and what kind of man he was, what kind of father he was, how did he show up or not show up? And you started hinting at that in terms of the lack of feedback, but it's your story and I'm really interested in it.
Yeah, actually, Alabama is a good time because I was born in Indianapolis. We lived there for a while. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then we moved to Alabama. Then we were in Lexington, Kentucky. Yeah, and then we went to Alabama, and that was all before I think I turned 5. My dad got a job in Huntsville, Alabama, so he moved the family there. My mom was an educator. I guess she had found a teaching job. I remember sleeping on the floor when we first moved into our house because the truck driver with all of our stuff, he went off the side of a mountain. I think he was okay. I don't remember exactly. Not all of our stuff was destroyed, but a lot of it was. So we just didn't have any of our stuff when we first moved there. So it's kind of a weird experience of like moving to a place and not feeling like not even having a bed to sleep in. So
tell me about your dad. What's your dad been like through your life?
He's certainly a proud person, or my experience of him is that he's been a proud person in the sense that some of the early lessons I got from him were he always wanted me to have some cash in my pocket. Uh-huh. He never wanted me to have to ask anyone else for anything. He worked very hard, so work was important to him.
What's his name and what's his job? What was he doing?
His name's Noujan. Yeah, Noujan. I don't know when he took the name Paul on, but Paul became his American name. Got a degree in mechanical engineering, so he was working at a compact disc manufacturing company. One of the third largest in the country was in Huntsville, Alabama. So, yeah, very mathematically oriented engineer, like having an engineer's mindset.
How did he do fatherhood? What was his strategy? Was he like coaching, sports team?
Definitely not the sports father.
My own dad, he never coached anything, but I remember we lived in Lake Tahoe for a few years and I was in my tween years and we were playing soccer in the snow. And he walks up and he's wearing glasses and he had this kind of Clint Eastwood look about him. and we're all pretty afraid of him for reasons I can share with you sometime. But he comes up and he's like, you could feel everybody on the soccer field go, whoa, dude, that dad is vibing hard right now. And he pulls me and my brother off the soccer field because kids shouldn't be playing in soccer in snow. And we were just having the best time. Wow. Super difficult, super humiliating, kind of like, oh, dude, super hard. So my dad wasn't a soccer or any kind of coach, really. He did do some support for me.
I appreciate that, because that just brought a memory to mind of when I played soccer for the first time. So it was in Huntsville, and there were the rec leagues you could join. I don't know when we arrived in Huntsville, but as soon as I started to make some friends in the neighborhood, I think we were hitting summer, and what do you do in Huntsville? You play soccer or you play some other sport. So I signed up for a soccer team that in the same league my friend was on. I show up to the first day of practice. My dad just drops me off, doesn't hang around. I've never played soccer in my life, so a lot of these other kids had already. And the coach was like, hey, go over to right forward. And I ran over to some part of the field, and like he's yelling at me because I'm not in the right location. I mean, I felt so humiliated that after the practice, when I got home, this is pre-internet, of course, so we had some Encyclopedia Britannicas, and I actually cracked open one of those and like looked up soccer so I could like find out where these positions were. But so this story also means a lot to me because it's also kind of it shares my experience of my dad, which is one where not necessarily there to show me the ropes beforehand. I'm sure like Persians love soccer. Like I'm sure my dad, when he was younger, he must have played some soccer, even if he didn't as the adult I knew him as. To even just think like, yeah, let me just maybe like spend a little time with my son out there.
Yeah.
And this is the way I remember it. You know, maybe I've blocked out something.
Yeah.
But that was a sad start for me with sports.
Yeah.
I think that was the first team sport I played, and I just felt pretty foolish going onto that field and not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing's amazing to me is you don't know if your dad ever played soccer.
Yeah. I don't know.
How is that like
that I would know that?
You would know what his passions were, or what his American life was like in Persia or Iran?
Well, I can tell you, I didn't know a lot about my dad until he visited me out here. So this is in my 30s, I'm thinking, or maybe it was late 20s, but I took him to Yosemite. I had not really heard any of his life. That's just the type of relationship we've had, where there hasn't been a lot of back and forth or just even chats like that. That was probably the one time I've like gotten to know my dad's history the most, was when we took a trip out to Yosemite.
What'd you learn about him that you didn't know?
He told me about some of his time in Iran with his friends, and he was also telling me a little bit more about my grandfather. He kind of shared also a tough story of how he got out of Iran. So yeah, I'd never heard that story. And part of that was to escape being drafted into the military for religious reasons.
What was your father's religion at that point?
He's a Baha'i.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Baha'is in Iran are actually not it's like the majority is Muslim.
Yeah.
So Baha'is are not really regarded well there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole history of persecution in Iran. So.
And so going in the military as a Baha'i would have been, I think it's a very peaceful religion, right? It's peace oriented.
Yeah. The idea of like killing another human being would be antithetical to the world unity that the Baha'i religion espouses. Yeah. So
he has a tough journey out. He comes to America. How's he meet your mom?
So he came to New York. He was in school in, I think, a community college at the time. My mom was still in high school because she was younger. He met her through, it was through a friend group. I don't quite remember, but it's a cool story because my aunt, I think he met my mom through my aunt's husband, my uncle. I do know this. He had a Camaro, a red Camaro. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Full American.
Yeah, man. And I think my mom talks about that car like, it was, I was gonna curse, but I'm not gonna curse on
You
your
can
podcast.
curse, this is fine. Totally.
Well, I mean, it's just like, he was a hot, it's like hot shit, like having a Camaro rolling around,
New York.
Yeah, especially being an immigrant, trying to like, oh yeah, that's when I started to hear some of the stories about how he used to like pick up jobs here and there, get cash however he could. He was a hustler.
Yeah.
He's definitely a hustler. Not in the sense that he was like trying to con people out of their money. I don't mean hustler in that sense. I meant he worked hard, and wherever he saw an opportunity to make some money, he would take that.
Red Camaro does not sound like an introvert.
No. Yeah, I guess.
Is your dad, is he an introvert like you? Was that just his youth? What was that?
No, it's funny. I've never even thought about that question of whether my dad is an extrovert or introvert. I would have to put him in the extrovert category.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't think about things, ponder them, but I don't think he thinks as much as much as I have about some things. I think he just accepts it at face value.
It's almost like he wasn't tooled. I mean, I don't know if he was tooled to raise an American child, but if he was tooled, or children, because I assume you have some siblings.
Yep.
And if he was tooled for that, but if he was also tooled to relate to maybe your introvert, maybe your sensitivity. I don't know if you were sensitive as a young person, but I'm almost hearing like a red Camaro, gregarious Persian, in New York. And then, here you are, and then I want to come back to this really kind of, for me, I find it emotionally moving, this idea that it's hard for you to echolocate who you actually are or how you're seen because there was gaps of contact that said, I see you. I think that's what you said. Is that your truth around that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a little story.
Yeah. Love it.
I forget if my parents were still in Georgia. I think they were. And I had gone back to visit them at one point from California. They said, hey, you still have a box of stuff. Can you go through it? And, basically they're saying, clear out your stuff. You've moved out a long time ago. So I was looking through there, and I also came across like old VHS tapes and like family videos. And I don't know, at that time, this is in my 20s, I was curious about that. So I said, hey, I'm going to take these with me back. This is when I think maybe I bought a VCR again. My intention was to take these and convert them over to, DVDs. But one of the videos I saw was when I was young. It was odd to me because I was seeing how awesome I thought my dad was. In the video I had, we were near the beach, and I was just trying to get my dad's attention, and I was just like, Dad, but like there was a sense of like my dad's the greatest kind of coming out of that video. And it was such a disconnect for me because I couldn't connect with that little boy. I was thinking, well, the way I interpreted it, as an adult, I was like, man, he just wants attention. He thinks the world of his dad. He just wants some of that to come back. Like, hey, Dad,
am I the world too?
Yeah. So
when did that break? Do you have a sense of when you stopped looking for that from your dad, if at all?
I'll say, I don't know about stop looking for it, but when I would say, like, if I had to pick an age, it would probably be around age 7. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did you find other father figures or people who gave you attention?
It's interesting you brought that up. As you were kind of setting the stage, I was just remembering like around the sports and those things, very much so. My friends' fathers were father figures to me. Even my dad's coworker who was 2 doors down from where we lived. I became quite the Michigan Wolverines fan.
Because
why is that? Because he went to Michigan and got his degree from Michigan. We used to watch hockey games and football on TV, and like I would just go hang out there. I haven't thought about that in the longest time, but I had basically a bunch of surrogate dads. And it was cool because he would take me to the actual hockey games in Huntsville. There was the Chargers. And
Huntsville Chargers.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Steve was his name. I really appreciated that. He had 2 girls. So I mean, it was kind of cool because like, yeah, it was kind of like a father figure.
Surrogate son a little bit too.
Yeah, probably so. My friend's father got me, his dad was into football, big football dad. And I got to ride along for that. And my friend Brad, I joined him and started playing football, and we played football together in junior high as well. And I played football all the way through high school, but that's due to like kind of having his father interested in him doing football. So I got to tag along. You know, even getting out to the practices was an issue. I don't know. I think I had some like challenge with getting my parents to like drive me to things.
What do you think their limitation, or in particular your dad's limitation, was around being able to show up in that way?
Man, I really just don't know to this day. There's some part of me that wants to say preoccupied, either with problems or work. I just don't have a good answer because as a child, I didn't understand. So and I never really asked them about that, but both my parents, because they were both kind of that way.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an immigrant thing. Like it's more difficult to feel included or feel safe in what they call soccer mom or football dad or whatever it is. I can imagine or project that was there. I don't know how your parents' racial experience was raising a family in Alabama. I could kind of imagine that, but nonetheless, it doesn't necessarily preclude, because, you know, there's lots of people of all backgrounds that step in and lean in. But one of the things I really love just hearing you start to talk about it is all of a sudden there was all these instinctive moments where you found the nourishment you needed. I see that as a kind of brilliance of nature, that the deep nature in each of us kind of knows. I think in some ways in the village model of human societies, that kind of happened more naturally, you know, and this supposition that it's all supposed to come from dad is probably a problematic idea. But what I want to really ask you now, Amir, is who touched you the most? Who was that fathering energy that found you and you found the most?
It's a little hard because each of these like father figures, I think, had a significant role for the years that they were there for. So it's like hard to equate the significant or the value. But I think during my teenage years, it was Ed Morrison. Yeah, man, he was such a cool dude. He had great musical interest. I think I got exposed to like Jimi Hendrix for the first time through him. He was a business partner with my parents. They decided to create this educational technology company. And he knew that I was into computers. And he used to work with this product called Macromedia Director. This is before Adobe bought them. And he spent time to teach it to me. And then I started working with him on projects. And then I think even before I was 14 or 13, I was getting paid to do some of this work. This wasn't through the company he had with my parents. I think it was just like a side gig. So he'd like give me a little bit of work to work on and like deliver back to him. He kind of took me in under his wing, and he really saw that interest in computers and encouraged me to stick with it. And he would just hang out and he'd teach me how to do things in Director. And I started to do some of my early programming then. And I felt like he thought I was a cool dude. And I thought he was a cool dude. So like, Ed, man, what a gift to have that. And his wife was super cool too. She loved me. It makes me smile thinking of them because I do not question whether those two love me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm to tears right now just saying that, but yeah, yeah, what a gift, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm finding myself thinking about the contrasting experiences between your dad and Ed, the impact on both sides of that, from a kind of like, I'm cool, I'm loved, I'm interesting, I'm wanted, I know I'm wanted, I know I'm valued. And then the other one's like, I'm not sure. How do you feel shaped by your dad? How do you feel shaped by those other men who how does your life feel shaped by them? If you get my question about impact.
Well, you're saying all of my father figures, including
all of them, man.
My dad, yeah,
the whole football team, father figures.
Yeah. I mean, I'll attribute the work ethic I have to both my parents. I saw them work pretty much their whole life, and they also loved their careers. So I don't like to make it seem like they were, martyrs for like working so much. They very much were career oriented. They had their own goals with where they wanted to get. Both of them did, and they put a lot of energy and focus into that. Yeah, I mean, Ed, like going back to Ed kind of like chilled me out a bit. Like, hey, like listen to some good music, like enjoy life a little bit. My friend Brad, his father, I forget his name. I would go hunting with them. My friend Todd, his dad was very much into like Jeeps and boating. And so I got to like get some of that experience. So all of these different father figures kind of gave me exposure to what I would say is like a more well-rounded childhood.
I want to give you a chance to ask me a question if anything's on your mind, and you've been really gracious in terms of just being open about your life experience with your father and your own life. I think it's fair to turn the tables.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So before instead of butchering your last name, can you say your last name for me?
Szilagyi.
Szilagyi. Yeah. It's interesting. It almost sounds Brazilian, but it's not Brazilian because you've told me it's Hungarian, right?
That's correct.
So I have no really like sense of what Hungarians are like, and I would guess that. Was your father your father was an immigrant, or was he?
No, my great grandfather was on my father's side.
Okay.
Yeah, his name was Demeter Szilagyi. We knew him as great-grandpa Dan. He probably died when I was 5. I can give you kind of general descriptions of what it feels like to have Hungarian bloodlines from my grandfather, my great uncle, and my great grandfather, and kind of talk about that a little bit, if that's what you're asking about.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, I consider Hungarians like staunch people, kind of like there's definitely a lot of joy. I would say joy more in a private settings, more so than what's emoted in public. But yeah, I'm curious whether you can, as you said, like trace that bloodline a little bit, and whether any of that came through your dad, or maybe I'm mischaracterizing Hungarians, but I just have a sense that they're stout people, a little stoic. Maybe I'm off on that, but I'd love to hear your take and whether you got any of that through your dad.
Definitely. Well, I haven't been to Hungary, and I'm a total European mutt with a little bit of sub-Saharan African in my DNA. I found out a year or two ago. Wow, God, so I don't know Hungary well. I haven't been there, but what I would say is that growing up, there was a feeling of like my grandfather had this kind of olivey skin, and there was a definitely distinct impression that corporal punishment was like part of it. Like, get the belt out, whip the ass, don't back talk, I'll smack your face, just kind of like a really intense physicality, which I didn't experience in any other of my mom's side or my grandmother's side. A quick to laugh. Yeah, there was like a quick to laugh in my dad, like a quick sense of humor, but also a real quick to anger. So there was a kind of intensity, and also quick to understanding. Like my dad was when he was alive, he died pretty young at 58, but he was also quick to understanding and grasp ideas and grasp people and situations, quick to judgment. When it came to like people being hurt generous with his patients, generous with his care, but simultaneously short-tempered. My grandfather was funny as fuck because he used to like to have burnt toast, and he said that his wife, my grandmother, was always burning it, but he liked it that way. And he would like smack us with like French toast in the morning because he thought that was funny. And he was somewhat incapacitated. He had his first heart attack when he was 26. His name was William Salaji. And I didn't find out till later that he used to run the streets of Cleveland. I guess his nickname was Blackie. I don't know why. He had his first heart attack when he was 26 and had a bunch of heart attacks and strokes. And so the method at that time was like, don't do much. Don't even go play golf, So there was a lot of limitation. And so my dad defied that. They both smoked heavily. My dad defied that quality of limitation and I think reacted to wanting doctors' influence in his life. And so he just didn't take care of himself the way he should have. And so funny enough, I got into medicine myself. That was my grandfather and my father. And so stout, I don't know. Staunch is what you said.
Yeah, stout, staunch. I'd have to go Google the definitions.
There's an older stories and myths I learned from a friend and Hungarian blood, and I'm forgetting the name of those right now, but I did do a medicine journey in Ireland with psychedelics. And when I was in this ancient multi-thousand-year-old temple, I had these visions. And among those visions I saw were like ancient Eurasians, kind of that Mongolian. That kind of Mongolian Hun kind of quality. And so I have taken a sense that there is, though my genetics didn't show it, deeper relationship with that old Mongolian Hungarian energy and that kind of warrior blood. So that's my answer. Did I answer it? I don't know if I did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I've met some Hungarians. They talked about my name being from like Transylvania. Apparently the second wife of Count Dracula was a Salaji. Somebody was reading a book about that and told me. I'm like, that makes sense. I stick needles in people, like blood comes out sometimes. Like, yeah. But I want to go to my question for you, which is the Father in you and the fathering qualities in you. And what I mean by that is the ability to give attention to, be present to, and nurture, maybe challenge those who are younger than you. And where is that showing up for you at this point in your life? Or how do you see that hopefully emerging or starting to emerge?
Well, I would say one area that I'm seeing this emerge is in terms of mentorship. I've taken the school I went to, Georgia Tech, there's a mentor program, and I've joined that. And I haven't had a lot of experience with that, but, was able to mentor a few students, answer some questions. That was my first year doing it, and I see continuing doing that. Also, it's interesting in this quantum computing realm, I have had a lot of people connect with me over LinkedIn. And what most people don't know is if they try to add me on LinkedIn, the first thing I ask for is whether they're willing to spend a 15-minute Zoom call to do proper intros. In terms of actually being an actual father, I'm on the fence about that. I'm not sure yet that is what is meant for me in my life.
Would you be okay talking about that for a minute?
Sure.
Being on the fence, what's that mean?
Yeah, for me, it's not just something that I do because I can. And I think it's mainly because of my relationship with, or my experience of being a child in my family. For me, if I were to have a child, it would be because I very much want to be a dad and want to show up and want to do that with intention and complete. It can't be complete, but with focus. Yeah. And then I balance that, and I can't hold it against my parents for very much going after their careers, because the being on the fence part is knowing what's ahead of me with the whole quantum computing. There's just so much learning ahead that, like, I wonder if having a family is where I would want to spend, energy, or whether I would stick to maybe bringing creations into the world in other ways.
Yeah. other
Yeah.
kinds of children. Yeah, that's beautiful. So I guess what I listen to, I really hear the need for you to have a kind of clarity and intention as an antidote, as not is not to repeat, just like, oh, we're just going to do this habit and not really think about the impact. And I guess that might be close to the quality of your integrity that I feel. That perhaps one of the things, if I can be forward enough to reflect how I know you and having learned more about your story, is that your beautiful warrior integrity energy seems to be in some ways a response, and a healthy response, to unthought out choices that have impacts on people like you and like me,
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, if you're going to leave a little thread there, I'm curious, can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that, like for having impact on you, and in what way has that unthought out resolve maybe, how that had impact on you?
For me, my parents had a very volatile relationship, and there was a great deal of turmoil, and probably one of my earliest painful moments I had to make in my life. I think I was like 4, and I don't know if my younger brother was born, but my 2 older brothers were surely around. And I remember consenting when my mom was talking to me that her and my dad needed to split up. And in that moment, I knew that it was probably the better thing for them to do, because the turmoil that was there, but I had to forego my need. And so I had to over adult. Like it was like I consented to something that I didn't want for myself as a child. What I wanted was an intact family that knew how to mostly work. and that wasn't what was happening. And I understood that at an early age. And so I guess, if you're 20 and 18 and you have 4 boys before you're 30, there's still a lot of life intelligence that still needs to happen that didn't quite happen. And don't get me wrong, they worked hard, and they showed up, and they did things, and they loved, and they fought, and they were human. But I know that to this day, I have to work very hard to feel at home in my family in certain periods of my life. It's not all the time. Sometimes I feel naturally at home, but I can go through states where it's not easy. I was joking with my wife when we were driving up to the mountains. I'm like, I don't think I was cut out for family life. Like I'm like, I just cannot cope right now with the series of things that are going on, or want to be here, or want to do this. And so there's this part of me that, and this is one of the reasons I love the Odyssey myth, the tale of the Odyssey, because the story of wandering lost fathers going through ordeals, while there's a son coming of age who needs his father, that's multi-generational problem. And evolutionary biology tells us that it's even more precarious for even more ancient species reasons. But just say in the last couple 1,000 years, this is not a first time round that my dad bailed a number of times and didn't know how to cope, or that I struggle with this capacity to be like highly invested, highly present, on point, doing what I need to do. And so, I kind of always have loved kids, and just have instinctively, just even when I was a child, I love children, and I enjoy them. The little neighbors around all the time. I'm like a bit of a Pied Piper in my spirit. So I have this relational energy with kids, but having children and being the father and like understanding how to do that well is an ongoing challenge for me for a variety of reasons. But that's the impact I feel like that when the model's not there, or the cultural or social understanding is not there, it's even harder for parental investment to take place, particularly if you're stressed, particularly if you're have been abused, or there's toxic elements in the family system. It becomes even more of a challenge, and it's a recovery project. So when I came back to, after like making a dedication 20 some years ago to helping the fathering energy, and realizing, wow, I'm still working through this in my life a couple decades in, then I'm now doing this podcast and really just going, I really want to have these conversations. It's like that whole arc of this value of mine around is coming back with an evolutionary biology bent, with a mythological bent, but also like you, me, personal men and women having these stories of like, wow, what is this fathering quality? What does it mean to us? How does it influence us? How did we find it instinctively? So I know that's a long answer, but it's my true answer of why I'm doing this. So for me, there was a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child who was overwhelmed by my parents' emotional conflict that made me feel pretty unsafe in family systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hearing a story of almost breaking, what I connect with too in my own life, almost breaking the cycle in a way. And the awareness piece is the biggest one. So even though you're saying this is tough, I'm not cut out for this, the awareness of it, totally. that's a big one. So
it was so great to say it and not be ashamed of it, then have my wife totally laugh at me and just be like, I'm so glad you said that. That's great, because you're difficult to be around right now. And it's just funny. It's funny to hear you be that honest that you just can't cope. But you're right. It is an achievement, right? It is a sort of achievement just to be able to laugh at oneself or be aware of it in that way.
Yeah. Well, I can say I'm looking forward to hearing the series.
I really appreciate you being a part of it. It's really an honor to just listen to your story, and thank you for showing up and being part of this conversation. It's really important.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please follow us on your favorite streaming platform and share our podcast with your community and friends. All music is composed by the incredible Chase Jackson at chasejacksonmusic.com. To learn more about this show, our guest, as well as Jeffrey and his work helping people find peace with their human nature, go to howhumanswork.us.